Hello everybody, my name's Tom and I'm here to talk to you about, you guessed it, F1 Fantasy. In this episode, video, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to be talking about using the Mega Driver and whether I think it is a good idea, a bad idea, somewhere in between, just give my opinion on whether it's going to be a useful thing to do in Imola, which is coming up very shortly, the next race at the time of recording. So I'm going to talk about pros and cons of what I think about it, basically, whether we should use the Mega Driver in Imola. But what I'm talking about is going to be specific to Imola, but it'll also kind of be useful just in general. There'll be general kind of tips about when to use the Mega Driver, which I will cover in this video as well. So, in my opinion, let's start things off. The only person I would be interested in personally to Mega Drive in Imola is Charles Leclerc. No one else is at his level at the moment, and when I say that, I don't want to insult all the fanboys of all the other drivers and everything, but honestly, Leclerc, I've got the spreadsheet up to start off this video because I wanted to just demonstrate the value he's providing at the moment. Averaging 46 points per race, as you can see here, points per million 2.46. He's beating his teammate consistently. It's just, the Ferrari is just so strong at the moment, and I think that if you're going to Mega Drive anyone in Imola, I would personally definitely be looking at no one else other than Charles Leclerc. Other people's opinion may differ, but yeah, this is my video and it's my opinion, so And another reason why I think Leclerc is a good option is if we look back at what happened last year in Imola, because as a F1 fantasy manager, I always like to look at, the pedigree of the driver at the track that they're going to see, if they're comfortable at that track. Oops. Go away. There we go. So as we can see, qualifying last year in Imola, Leclerc was in 4th position, which is pretty much the best you could have hoped for. Last season the Mercedes and the Red Bull were leagues ahead of everyone else, so being the best of the rest is pretty promising for Charles Leclerc being a Mega Driver in the upcoming race. He did well there. We go to the race results. He also finished in that position P4, though. If you remember the race, it was quite a chaotic race. The big old crash with Bottas and Russell, and a couple of other incidents that were going on. We had some contact between Max and Lewis. Yeah, there's lots going on, but Leclerc kept level-headed and stayed in 4th position, picked up a nice bit of points for the Ferrari crew last season. So straight away I'm thinking Leclerc is good around the track. I know it's only one race that I'm looking at here, but it's the most recent thing that we got to go off, so I'm thinking Leclerc is decent. On top of that, I think that it's clear for everyone to see that the Ferraris are just the best at the moment. If we again go back to the spreadsheet quickly and we look at the Ferraris here, you again look at the values, look at the points per million, look at how many points they're producing. The Ferrari car, not even just in terms of fantasy, just in terms of the actual car itself, the car is clearly the best car that there is at the moment. So that's another argument for using the Mega Driver now, because we know the Ferraris are the best, so it's arguably a very good opportunity to capitalise on that known quantity and use the Mega Driver when we know what the best car is. Because, Mercedes and Red Bull are not going to be sitting down, twiddling their thumbs. Christian Horner and Toto Wolff had a nice cup of tea together. They're going to be working hard to get their upgrades brought as quickly as they can to improve their car and catch up with the Ferraris and possibly even overtake them. And as that happens, obviously the Ferraris are going to be upgrading as well. But, we could see it balance out. We could even see the Ferraris drop back a little bit. The Mercedes or the Red Bulls jump ahead. That's unclear, but what is clear right now is that the Ferraris are the strongest. So another argument there, I would say, in favour of using Leclerc this coming race. So let's move on. Let's have a look at the actual why. Why would we be doing it? Why is it special this weekend or this coming weekend? Is because it's a sprint race. So with the sprint race, there are further points available. So this is why I think a lot of people are interested in using the Mega Driver in particular, not just because Leclerc's doing really well, blah blah blah, which is fair enough, but the sprint race is worth extra points. So let's have a quick look at the actual point scoring. You get a point just for finishing the race basically. You get points for each position that you gain based on your qualifying position. And again, you get points for beating your teammate and points for fastest laps. Obviously, only one person can get that, but we're hoping if we're Mega Driving Leclerc that he will be getting those extra 3 points, which will turn into 9 points because Mega Driver equals triple. Let's move down. Sprint position bonuses. You also get points for where you finish in the sprint. So if if Leclerc was to finish in first place, he would get those 10 points, which would be triple to 30 points. So this is why it's appealing to use it in Imola, because there's that sprint opportunity where we know Leclerc's a strong candidate for winning the race. So you can see the normal weekend down the bottom here, you just get points for qualifying and the race. Sprint weekend you get qualifying, sprint and race. So there's extra points available in the sprint race. So I think a lot of people are going to be jumping on using the Mega Driver this coming weekend, which is fine. I say this coming weekend, at the time of recording, it's like the next weekend, but you know what I mean. Let's have a look at the actual points. So the maximum amount of points you can actually get are 21 points in the sprint race. So if we look, so imagine Leclerc was to finish, he had the best race. He's going to get 1 point there. Probably not going to get many points for this. And if he does get points for positions gained, that means he's not getting the maximum points for qualifying. Because obviously you get, in order to get positions gained, it's based on qualifying. So in order to get positions gained, he's going to have to qualify further down, which we don't want anyway. So that kind of cancels each other out. So we can kind of ignore that when we're looking at the sprint race. So he's going to get 1 point, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Say he finishes first, he's got 10, so that's 16. So he's going to get an extra 16 points. Arguably, is that's like probably one of the best case scenarios, the extra 16 points. So that's a strong argument for. However, there is an argument against, because he's not on any streaks. So you get points, again, if we go back up quickly, streaks, so you get points. The drivers get 5 points if they hit their 5 qualifying sessions in a row in the top 10, and a race streak for 10 points, finish in the top 10, 5 races in a row. So there's a strong argument for waiting and not using Leclerc this coming race, because if we wait for him to be on a streak, if he's on a double streak, it's also worth 15 points. So the 15 points from the streak, which in my opinion are more reliable points than what happens in a sprint race, relying on him doing well in a sprint where it's kind of high risk. I think there's some argument to be had saying that the points from the streaks are much more secure if they were to come around than they are in the sprint race. And when you look at the points difference, the difference between the points you get from the streaks and the points you get from sprint race are kind of the same. Like I just went over that kind of a good case scenario for the sprint, where you end up with about 15, 16 points, and then if you end up with a double streak here, again it's 15 points. So there's not really much extra incentive of a sprint over someone on a streak. And also further down the line, there is a possibility, it's not necessarily very likely, but there's a possibility that someone like Leclerc or even Verstappen or whoever will be on a streak, or potentially a double streak, and there'll be a sprint race in Austria in round, I want to say 11 off the top of my head. I can't remember off the top of my head. So Austria in like a few races time, there is a chance that someone could be on like a race and a qualifying, or one or the other, plus a sprint race. Currently, there's no one on a streak like that. So if you're going for the Mega Driver this coming race, and you're only going to be getting the points for the sprint race. And there's another argument to be had against the sprint, or against using the sprint. And potentially just waiting for a non-sprint race where there's only streaks available. You could argue that the sprint race is actually a lot higher risk, because as we can see here, I've sort of glazed over it initially, but there are red numbers over here. So there is the possibility of losing points during a sprint race. And obviously, every point that you get, or every negative point you get as a Mega Driver, is trebled. So for example, imagine worst case scenario, Leclerc for some reason gets disqualified from the sprint. He gets minus 10 points. You've put the Mega Driver on him. He then gets minus 30 points. That's like a really big risk. It's not likely, let's face it, but there is that element of risk. So something to bear in mind anyway. And another argument I would say for not putting the Mega Driver on Leclerc this week is because of how highly he's going to have the turbo driver put on him, actually. So if we look at his ownership here, he's picked by 66%. I would argue that the majority of those people are going to be putting the turbo driver on him. If they're not putting the Mega Driver on, they're going to put the turbo driver on. So imagine you put the Mega Driver on Leclerc, everyone else has put the turbo driver on. You're not making too much of a gain. Everyone else is getting like double the points anyway, and you're getting triple the points. Yep, you're going to make a gain, but it's not going to be great. It might be worth waiting until, again, I'm going to mention Austria, and just as an example, say Max Verstappen looks like he's like really hot for that weekend, and you've already burnt your Mega Driver option on Leclerc back in Imola. We're then looking at Verstappen. All these people are putting the Mega Driver on Verstappen. You might not even have Verstappen in your team, or if you do, you can't put the turbo driver on him. So best case scenario is everyone's still getting triple your points. Worst case scenario, you can't get Verstappen in your team, and they're all getting like 150 points, and you just get nothing. And that means that they can also, Mega Driver Verstappen whilst also turbo driver and Leclerc. So you're sat there with your turbo driver and Leclerc, like equaling everyone else's points, and they're just getting like stonking points off Verstappen being Mega Driver. So there is some balance in there to take into account as to how much you're actually hypothetically gaining by putting the Mega Driver on Leclerc this coming weekend in Imola. Another thing to take into account is Bonotti, the Ferrari team principal, I think that's his name. Correct me if I'm wrong. He has been quoted as saying that they are not going to be bringing any significant upgrades to Imola, and that's due to the lack of practice time. You only get one practice session, then straight into qualifying. The Red Bulls and Mercedes are thought to be bringing some upgrades to Imola. So although I said the Ferrari looks fantastic right now, it could be balanced out slightly more than what we're thinking come Imola, but I'd still argue that until we see anything concrete, that the Ferrari is still like the best car for me. Another thing to take into account when considering the Mega Driver this coming weekend is the current streaks. You can see again on this page that Leclerc is not on any streaks. In fact, no one's on any streaks apart from like constructors, which doesn't really count for Mega Driver. You can see Alpine are the only constructor here on any sort of streak. So there could be an argument to say, wait a week, go put the Mega Driver on the following week, because Leclerc is highly likely to be on qualifying plus race streak, in Miami. So you could say, oh yeah, I'm going to put the Mega Driver on Leclerc in Miami. I mean, that comes with its own risk because we don't really know enough about Miami, and the fact that it looks like there's a lot of long straights in Miami, so it could favour the Red Bulls, blah blah blah. But it's still an argument to be had that you could wait until he's on the qualifying race streak after Imola and then put the Mega Driver on him then. But yeah, it's all kind of weighing up the pros, the cons. There's so many things to think about. One other thing I will mention just before I sort of wrap this up is the weather. Last year in the race at Imola, there was rain. It wasn't like a full wet race, but there was rain affected during the race. I think they started on intermediates, if I'm correct. So yeah, if there is rain again this year, I haven't actually checked the forecast. We're still like over a week away, so it's probably not worth checking at the moment. But keep an eye on the weather forecast, because if rain is forecasted, or at least there's a good chance of there being rain during the race or sprint race or whatever, I would absolutely not put the Mega Driver on anyone. I think the rain comes with so much high risk that it's just not worth it. So keep an eye on the weather. Just a little extra bonus tip for you guys. Just as a quick example, let's think about what happened in Hungary last year. Absolute chaos. So yeah, don't Mega Drive if there's going to be rain. I think it's too high risk. And that pretty much sums it up. So from a personal point of view, I'm currently looking at everything, and I'm thinking I'm going to be patient with the Mega Driver this year. I think it's very tempting because of how strong Ferrari are, because of how like the form that Leclerc is on. I think it's very tempting, and I think a lot of people are going to be going for the Mega Driver in Imola, but I think I will be leaning away from that, making that decision, confirming that decision, so to speak, and pushing it back and looking for further opportunities down the line for combining streaks, and potentially combining the streaks along with the sprint race in Austria, or just some other opportunity. So it could be a complete, I could be blowing a great opportunity here by putting it off and hoping for better. We could be, cut your losses, stick it on him now, get those points in Imola, forget about it until after the break when you get another Mega Driver, the summer break that is. But yeah, I'm kind of leaning away from using it. I haven't looked through all the pros and cons, but I'll be interested to know what you guys think. As ever, please comment and let me know what you're thinking, because I'm kind of just talking to myself here, and it would be nice to get some feedback on what you guys think. So yeah, that pretty much sums it up. I'm going to wrap it up there, stop talking, and I'll be back probably next week with my thoughts leading up to Imola, just a general sort of team selection, that sort of thing. So make sure you're subscribed for that, and I'll also be putting my team out on the YouTube community tab shortly before qualifying starts on next Friday. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening, and I'll catch you soon. Bye bye for now.